Slabbers, get ready. February CGC submission numbers are in, and some familiar faces are holding strong. With the Deadpool and Wolverine hype at full throttle, collectors have been sending in their copies of the latest adventures featuring Marvel's favorite chaotic duo. Meanwhile, X-Men, Venom, and Spider-Man continue to dominate the submission charts. But where did they land this time? And the biggest question of all, Absolute Batman was last month's top dog, but will he hold the throne, or is there a new king of the slabs? Let's break it all down this month's top 10 CGC submissions. The top CGC submissions for the month of February 2025. We have some repeats, but we also have some newbies. What's your thoughts on the slabs from last month, and then what we're going to look into in the next couple of minutes?
Oh, just from last month, it just was so cool to see the numbers of these slabs that are getting submitted for these titles. Mm-hmm. It just lets you know that you don't have to be any kind of mathematician to figure out that CGC is doing pretty well.
Yeah, I know. But I'm curious to see what's going to happen now with what's, and I'm not going to get political here. This is not that platform, but with the tariffs that are going on, it's going to affect PSA. So I'm certain it'll eventually affect CGC in some way.
Yeah, and you know what? I've submitted to both CBCS and CGC, and they do their return shipping. I'm in Canada, in case anybody didn't know, and they do their return shipping differently. CGC, it's kind of you pay all at once. Mm-hmm. And so for your US, anybody watching in the US, it's $50 if you do a submission to get it back to you is the cheapest way you can get it back for 25 bucks. And internationally, it's 150 US. So it's $100 difference. And CBCS, they do the shipping, but it's much cheaper, but you always get a bill later from the shipping company for the customs, which can be anywhere from $15 to $60. You just don't know what it's going to be. So it'll be interesting to see. Personally, I believe that CGC could easily eat that cost in the amount that they're charging for us to get our books internationally. There's a lot of wiggle room there that to me is just right into their pockets. Yeah. CBCS, because they step back from it, they'll just let the person absorb the cost when they get their shipping bill later, which is going to be higher. So it will hurt coming from Canadian if you're buying from that place. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Right. Cool. Thanks for sharing. All right, let's take a look at the top books that were slabbed for the month of February. At number 10 is Venom, Lethal Protector, number 1. This book was from 1993 from Marvel Comics. Currently, now, there's 24,395 books. Last month, we covered it, and there was 24,136. That is a difference of 259 books that were added to the census. That is an increase of 1.1%.
Amazing. Like, again, I think one of the best things about this segment is that it kind of lets you know, it reminds you of patience.
You're right.
You know what I mean? Like, there's basically 25,000 graded copies of this book. If you're looking for it, which it's a great book. I love this book. The series is awesome. If you haven't read it, read it. It's his first solo series. Mm-hmm. But, it's out there. Just be patient. You'll find it. It'll come to you. Don't go crazy buying, 9.9s for tens of thousands of dollars or anything like that.
I agree with you. I think this gives you perspective from what's out there, what really exists. The fact that 259 books were submitted says a lot.
Yeah. And that, again, do the math on that, at least $25 a submission, and that's one book, right?
Yeah. And this is number 10.
Yeah, exactly.
The other one had more submissions. So let's take a look at our next one. That's number 9. And that is Spider-Man #1, the Silver Edition, which came out in 1990 for Marvel Comics. Currently, there's 19,444 copies. The number last month was 19,174. That's a difference of 270 books that were submitted, an increase of 1.4%.
This one's really interesting to me because there's so many copies out there. It's kind of like an X-Men 1 scenario.
Mhm.
You know, there's so many out there. It just amazes me that, you know, why send it in? You know, because it's not a value, it's not a costly book for you to get in a 9.8 already. And the margin on it is very small, realistically. And this variant, the Silver Edition, isn't like a scarce one or anything like that. It's just interesting. I love the book. I think it's great. It's a classic cover. And I have at least 5 copies of this book. But just always interesting that 270 people decided, you know, I got to get this thing graded.
Yeah. And, you know, it is a Silver Edition. So there is some rarity, is not probably the right word to call it, right? But what it is a book that, based on what we're seeing here, is close to 20,000 copies exist at minimum. At
Yeah.
minimum. That means there's a lot more out there. It may not be the original or the regular one that came out, but it's a nice cover. I will admit it looks nice in the slab.
Yeah.
I will admit to that. Looks nice in the slab, but just like Venom, there's a lot.
Patience.
Number 8, another book we talked about last month, and that's Wolverine #1. This came out in 1982 for Marvel Comics. Currently, there's 30,000 copies, 30,703 copies from 30,406. That's a difference of 297, just 3 shy from 300. That's an increase of 1%.
This is a classic cover. You know, this is a book that I just recently bought. I understand why people want to get this graded. There's more of a margin involved in this one, for one. If you've got raw copies of it, you can easily make more money if it's graded. So I totally get that part of it. And, you know, it looks great on a wall.
It's one of those books that, ideally speaking, you probably think that it's a rare book. Once it's from 82. It's a limited series. It was before Wolverine was super popular, but yet there's a lot of copies of this book.
You're 100% right, Izzy. Like, I hadn't thought of it like that before. That just made me realize, like, I probably bought this a month ago, and I went into a shop that I don't go to all the time, but I go to it, like, you know, probably a few times a month. And they had all 4 up on the wall, and I didn't own any of them. I just have a trade of it. And I felt like I should really get these, like, before those are gone. Like, who knows when they're going to come up again. But then you see these numbers, it's like, you know,
It will come up again.
Yeah, it's going to come up again.
It's going to come up again. And it's just, like I said, it's an iconic cover. Frank Miller cover when he knew how to draw right. Sorry, no pun intended, but I'm just saying. And it's amazing what the print run will be of this book. It has to be high. But I'm shocked that it is high because, like I said, it's a limited series in 82 for a character who hasn't really been tested. This is his first time being tested in his own series, where beforehand he was just an X-Men character. Now he's in his own series, and it's taking a risk, but it was a risk that paid off at the end.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a ton of these books out there. The print run was probably very high.
Let's go with number 7. Speaking of print runs, Marvel Superhero Secret War #8. This book also came out in 84 from Marvel Comics. There's 32,970 in the census. That's from 32,667. Difference is 303. That's an increase of 0.9%. People are getting ready. That black costume's coming.
Oh yeah, iconic. cover. And again, we've talked about this book lots of times. Like, I bought this when it was coming out, and just, I love the Secret Wars story. I really wish they would do this story rather than the other one's good. You know, I agree, it is good, but this one to me is just has such a special place in my brain that I'd love to see this even animated with really good animation and voice acting would be great.
I can't wait, because even though they've never made that announcement that the black suit's coming, that announcement has not been made. The spec on it is so high that it will be a letdown if they don't do it.
Do you think that, in your opinion, like in the MCU, like Kevin Feige and his office, that they have meetings where they have that kind of planned out? They must know that all we want is to see, you know, Tom Holland as Spider-Man, or Spider-Man, any of them, as, you know, getting that symbiote for the first time, or having Eddie Brock from, you know, the Tom Hardy movies meet up. Like, when they showed that little teaser at the end, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what we're all waiting for.
But the problem with Spider-Man is the whole Sony effect. What Sony's getting from it? What does Sony want to do with it? They're not going to let it go. No matter how many times people will say they are, they're not going to let it go. You're not going to give up $1 billion franchise. You're going to still cough up some garbage movies just so you can hold on to rights. And then you make that money back when you do the Spider-Man movie, when you do the Spider-Verse movies. They don't care. Those losses that they have from Madam Web and Craven and Morbius, they don't care about that.
Yeah.
Because they're making it all back when they do a Spidey Homecoming, or they do a No Way From Home, when they do Spider-Verse. They're just making that money back. Could they make more money? Yes. But they don't think that way, unfortunately.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. And it's one of those things, it's the human factor of these movies that kind of brings me down a little bit. Like, look at, you know, all the X-Men movies, and you can see where the first one starts out and there's great care about the comic characters, and the story is kind of well written and everything. And then, you know, characters become more popular and the actor is more popular, so they get more money. And because they're getting more money, they get more of the screen time. And I think Hugh Jackman did a great job as Wolverine, but it's not the Wolverine movie in the X-Men stories. It should be the X-Men movie.
Mhm.
And I just
It was
don't.
always going to happen, though. That was always going to happen, regardless of whether it's Hugh Jackman or not. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Mhm. He was the most popular X-Men, so as being the most popular X-Men, what are you doing? I do admit, when they went with First Class, that was taking a risk. They had him in a little cameo. That was still taking a risk. It paid off for them, but they eventually had to bring him back sooner or later. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there you have it. Going back to this book here, I look at this one and I think of Amazing 252. And even though this book came out several months later, this one seems to be more beloved. Why is
it's
that?
interesting because they're both like iconic. One's the homage, like this one has just been homage so many times. I don't know. I don't know why. I think it may be the kind of the shock of the story and how it happened, and everybody knows kind of that's the history. That's where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. They're both should be in every Spider-Man fan's collection, though, for sure.
Yeah, this is one of those rare occasions that the first appearance is not more important than the origin. Right. Let's go to number 6. And that's a new book, and that's Deadpool Wolverine #1. This book came out in 2025 from Marvel Comics. 330 copies were submitted in the month of February. That there is no increase because there were 0 beforehand. Speaking of Wolverine, throwing some Deadpool in that.
It's crazy. 330 copies. Oh, and like, but why, Izzy? Why? Like, you can buy this book for less than cover price probably right now. Like
Well,
it's
that's the
not a
submissions. That's
yeah.
just the
Like
submissions there.
I know. Like what is this book going to be? The value of this book going to be in even in a 9.8? And is it going to be $70 maybe? You know,
Mhm. Who's to say? It's a book that I don't even think $70 is. I think that's too high. I think at the end of the day, it'll probably be $50 at max, maybe
I
even
would
lower.
yeah, I would say these submissions are from mostly people that are in the speculator end of it and just looking to have this show at a con and sell it to somebody walking by. Then their kid yells, "Daddy, I want Deadpool and Wolverine."
Yeah, I agree. There's nothing special about the book. There really isn't. And like we said, it's just it's now been submitted. And
Yeah.
in that submissions, you got 330 copies. So with that said, poof. Number 5, Absolute Batman, the third printing. This is the Akira homage. Bear in mind, this is not the New York Comic Con homage, which is in color. This is the black and white edition. There's currently 360 copies now in the census, as opposed to 15 copies 30 days ago. That's an increase of 345 books, which is an increase of, get this, 2,300%.
Yeah, and this one I hadn't seen this cover before, I don't think. I love a
Oh,
good
really? You haven't seen that cover?
No, I love a good Akira homage cover, so I think it looks really good.
Yeah.
And this one, as opposed to the last issue, this one I understand why people are submitting it. It
Mhm.
looks great. It's not a regular cover. It's going to be a classic. It's a homage. This is a no-brainer as a submission to me, whereas Deadpool and Wolverine is the complete opposite.
It's a great one. I personally have the color one because when I was in New York Comic Con, I bought 2 copies, one for me and one to send out to flip. And it was just one of those books that I had to have. I love Akira. I think with Absolute Batman and then this image, it's
How do you
perfect.
like do you like the color one or the black and white one better?
I like both. It's hard to decide. The reason why the black and white works because it fits to that whole manga thing, right? Because the whole manga aesthetic, where you open up a manga, it's in black and white for the most part. So that's part of it. I think that the color one looks just as good though. So it's hard to decide. I have to look at the color one once again to make that decision.
I wish I could remember right now, but I just went through the previews and I want to say it was Image, but don't quote me on it. There is another Akira homage coming up that's in previews right now. If people are,
There's a red Sonya that was just done.
that's it. I think that's the one.
It was just done. And there's plenty of these. There's plenty of Akira homages, but this one stood out because it is Absolute Batman. It works. It fits with the story as well. So that was number 5. Let's take a look at number 4, and that's Spawn number 1 from Image Comics in 1992. This book currently has 35,512 copies in the census. That's up from 35,161 with a difference of 351 copies. That is a 1% increase. Another book, there's a lot out there, but everybody wants to get their Spawn graded.
Yeah. And you know what? I am going to get mine graded, Izzy, but you know why I'm getting mine graded. If you remember, because mine is a newsstand.
Ooh,
So I'll get that one
fancy.
graded. But I would definitely Spawn 1 is one of those books that if I could buy for less than $100 a 9.8 already graded and save the headache in a new case, I would pay for it, no problem, just to have it, because it's a classic historical comic book that there was a lot happening at that time when it came out, and with Todd McFarlane and his own company, it's a pretty important book, I think, even though there's millions of them out there.
I agree. It's a book that today people still talk about, people still want, but there's still a desire for Spawn number 1. So even though there's millions of copies, literally, it's one of those books that even though there's millions of copies out there, there's only 35 in the census. Think about that.
Yeah.
There's a lot out there.
And any Canadian people or international that are watching that are kind of missing some issues, I just saw on Instagram that Capcom, a Canadian store, just got in boxes and boxes and boxes of a run of Spawn from 1 to, I think, 170 or something like that. So if you're missing any, that might be a good spot to get them.
Yeah. I think I'm going to have to get me a new Spawn #1. I do have a copy, but I want to get a better quality copy because mine was a reader copy. So I will pick this up eventually. It's a $25 book, so I'm pretty sure I could find it for a really good price.
I think every store has a copy of this or multiple copies.
They probably do. All right, let's take a look at number 3. Ultimate Universe 1 Year In #1. This is the spoiler Capchulo variant that came out this year. There's 403 copies in the census now. That's an increase of 51 from last month. That means 352 were submitted. That's an increase of 690.2%.
We've talked about this before. I'm still surprised that in all of the lists and the things people talk about, that those Marvel Comic Present books have not shown up in any list because of this series. I'm just surprised by it. I think it's a great book, and we talked about this. It's been in so many lists. We knew this was going to be heavily graded. I'm just surprised that the hype isn't a little bit higher about it. That's all.
Yeah, I agree. Especially with Absolute Batman, you would think it would be kind of like neck and neck with Absolute Batman. And it's good. It's not bad. There's some mystery to him that people like. It's a nice homage, and the other books are doing well as well. And this is this is technically the first cover appearance of the character. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't get it personally.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Ultimate Universe 1 Year In #1, the spoiler variant. Let's take a look at number 2. Woohoo! X-Men #1, 1991 from Marvel Comics. There was 24,234 copies in the census today. That's from 23,887. That's an increase of 358 copies that were submitted. That is a 1.5% increase.
Let me ask you, Izzy. So, do you think that a 9/8 of this book, any of the covers, like except for the really weird misprinted ones, will ever have any value, say, over $200?
No.
I don't think so either.
There's too many copies.
I know. I would like to own, I just thought of it when I saw this cover. Sure, I'd like to have all of the covers, the main ones, in a 9/8. That would be kind of cool. You put them all together or whatever.
You line them up.
Yeah, but it would be for personal reasons. It would never be for value reasons.
But you said it best. It'll be for personal reasons. And that's why this book is being submitted so many times.
Yeah.
It's being submitted because people want to have that lineup of slabs. This is a perfect book for slabbing.
Yeah.
It really is, because you guarantee to have a reader copy somewhere.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about that part.
Yeah.
And then you could get all the books signed up. No brainer to me.
Do you think that some part of these submissions, I don't know the breakdown, I don't know if you noticed it, but do you think there's some people submitting like 25 of these at a time to try to get that 9/9 or 10?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's absolutely happening. It's a hard book to get at a high grade because the paper quality is very flimsy. It's good quality paper, I'll say that, but it's flimsy. So it could be easily dented, even among transit, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I don't know how many of them had that gatefold cover, if it was all of them or just one, but even that, because of that fold, I know that line of the fold is almost always kind of like frayed or worn or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, there's so many that you don't even know. There, I'm sure a 9.9 or even a 10 will pop up if it has it already. I haven't looked at the census recently to see that for sure. I'll make sure I'll do that for next month because I'm pretty sure it'll be in the list next month too.
Yeah, it's surprising. Like like for the month, the whole month, out of all of the comics, this one is the most submitted, almost.
Yep,
You know what
it's
I
the
mean?
second most submitted.
Second most submitted. It's just that's a surprise to me.
It's
And it
also
will be.
it's one of the highest selling books, like even today. So when we do trending books or we do the top performing sales, what we look at is we look at the books that sold the most for over the month, but they don't necessarily do the numbers justice, because if that was the case, we're always going to see X-Men #1, we're always going to see Spider-Man #1, we're always going to see Spawn #1, Venom, Leaf. Those are books that you're always going to see on the top 10 selling books because they always sell. One, because they're inexpensive because there's so many copies, and two, because people actually do want them. So you have to weed them out of this list. For example, one of the things I do from this list, so that you know, and these numbers here are not exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's because there are retailers that submit a bundle of books at a time. So you do see that. I remember talking to you when we first did this list, how we saw bundles of books that being submitted, and they're being submitted by a retailer. So we count those out. Those are not included. So the submissions that we are showing here are customer submissions that happen. Or if they are retailers, but they are based off back issues.
Yeah.
So not from new books that, okay, we're going to send out 500 copies. We have to take those out. So we do that as well.
I think that's better anyway. And we had talked about that. And because that's, to me, I'd rather see a list that contains a book that I might be able to go buy rather than, retailer exclusive that, I may never even have a chance to own.
Yeah. All right. You ready for number 1?
Yep.
It's at no surprise for the second month in a row. Absolute Batman #1, 2024, TC Comics. 1,952 are in the census. That is an increase of 1,387. That means 565 books were submitted, a 40.7% increase. This book, you know what's funny? I'm thinking about submitting my books tomorrow. So I'll be the same thing. I'll do the same thing with this book. People want to have this book graded.
Oh man, just imagine, a giant wave of absolute Batman slabs. It's a tsunami approaching everyone, and in a month or two, when all of these clear, the market is just going to be flooded with these books. And the only chance you have of having any kind of value is if you happen to get a 9.9 or
it exists already.
Or
there's
10.
2 that I know of.
Yeah, that's it.
I know of 2.
And it's a tough grade because this is a flimsy, floppy book.
Yep. The term floppy, you said it best. There you have it. Number 1 for the second month in a row. Absolute Batman #1. We hope you enjoy this one. Please let us know in your comments what you think about these slabs. And what do you think is next month's #1? Do you think Absolute Batman will come back, or do you think another book will take that list? Who's to say? I'm pretty sure there are some contenders that are going to come in for next month, but we'll find out when the time comes. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more comic content. Check out these other videos for even more insight, and I'll see you at the next one. Excelsior.